Good day. This presentation is primarily for libraries and the folks in the reference department that are in charge of acquisitions and planning events for the community. My name is Bintel Powell. I am the CEO of Bandit Publishing, and this is to basically discuss a book called The Formula. It's a mixture of engineering and entrepreneurship that we've been selling as a curriculum into public school systems now for about 15 years. And we believe it's very important to put this book in the library system to make parents aware that this sort of content is available for themselves and for their children. There's a real need for black and brown kids to be technologically savvy and competent. They are falling behind tragically in the tech race, and we believe we can close the technological divide with this book and with this teaching tool. So this is my sophomore effort. My first book was called Betrayed. It was my first shot at writing a novel. It was autobiographical. It is autobiographical. I did a bit of a media tour, which I did myself. I acted as my own publicist. And I was on shows like the Wendy Williams show, a number of different television shows on BET with Dr. Ian Smith, as well as Howard Stern, who wasn't as racist as I thought he was going to be, actually, but somewhat racist, but wasn't as bad as I expected. He was actually a pretty cool interview, and we did a few shows together. But it was my 15 minutes of fame. At the time I released the book, I was the most popular author in the country, and again, I acted as my own publicist. This is my sophomore effort. The two books are connected. Betrayed is essentially about colorism, being the children of two Jamaican immigrants. Colorism is a very big deal, pain point in Jamaica, as you know, extended from the Willie Lynch syndrome. I remember being on the Wendy Williams show and Charlemagne trying to tell me, hey, you're talking about the Willie Lynch syndrome, and I didn't even know Willie Lynch had something to do with colorism. I hadn't read the Willie Lynch letters, but he is the father of racism and the post-traumatic slave disorder throughout the world. It is him. He's a slave consultant from the Caribbean, and that's what the book is about, the first book. Although it was presented as a sort of a Sex in the City sort of a thing, and that's the way the cover presents itself, which a lot of people thought was ghetto. I heard that comment. I don't see anything ghetto about this cover. The young lady on the cover, the dark-skinned lady, her name is Sky P. Marshall. She's a bona fide movie star. She's wearing a Birkin bag and clothes from Saks. I'm wearing all Ralph Lauren Purple Label. I was wearing Purple Label before Jay-Z and Beyonce ever brought it. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is that people in libraries especially tend to question my pedigree and think that some black women used to tell me I wrote these books when I was in jail. I've never been to jail, other than the lies that my ex-wife perpetrated against me with ridiculous orders of protection. I had never been to jail. But this was the aroma of the mentality. When I call the library specifically, they tend to say, well, who are you? And, you're a self-published author. You couldn't possibly be a real writer. So just to let all of you folks know that I am not, I didn't write this in jail. I didn't grow up in the ghetto, per se. I'm not a hoodlum. I'm not a gangster. I was also told I was a stripper. I am none of those things. And this presentation is to, if people are going to be looking at the book, they're looking at me. So this is to once and for all let people know who Bintel Powell is. He is certainly and I didn't go to jail. I wasn't a drug dealer. So all of these references, I'm sure because I'm dark-skinned and I have a certain phenotype is where this all comes from. But so the books are connected because they say that the black community is the 9th richest community on earth. And one of the elements of the formula, which is a mathematical recipe for a company, I worked as a sales engineer. That was my official title. All the time I was hanging out in the entertainment industry. Nobody knew I was an engineer. I was an engineer the whole time, so I was really a spy, stealing information so that I could create these books and hopefully tell people throughout the world what is really going on in the corporate sector and how to make what I call here in the book a money machine. It's a mixture of engineering and entrepreneurship. And so that's how the books are connected. Relationships. Anybody that knows anything about their salt in business knows that success in business is 99.99999% relationships. And if the black community, because of colorism, has no relationships with itself, it's a broken money machine. And that's why these two books are connected, and I believe that they're critically important. I believe that the core of our problems as black people is colorism, and until we deal with that and address it economically, if it doesn't matter how successful we are individually, if we don't do business with each other because of skin color, it's all for nothing. So this presentation is just specifically for the libraries, to address who I am, my pedigree, so to speak. It's not to brag or be obnoxious, but as a knee-jerk reaction to being told I was a hoodlum and I was a bum and I was either wrote books in jail or I was a stripper, all the worst sort of things black women have said to my face, and the librarians have. You can even hear it in their tone when I call them. This is to address that. So if you do want to know, and if you do believe that these books are important for black children, and if you want to inquire about who I am, I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to be obnoxious, because some people call me, on the flip side of that, arrogant. Either I'm arrogant or I'm a bum and going to jail. It's just living as a black author. But this is just to clarify who I am, and so that hopefully my experiences will lead you folks to believe that this content could actually be something that I have in my possession, and I am articulate enough to express it in words, in language, in a book. One could make a case that the stage was set for this with my mother, who was an English teacher back in Jamaica. Jamaican people are very revolutionary and very academic focused. My mother attended Montego Bay High School, and which is the sister college for Cornwall College, a boys' school, I believe. And this is where she got it from, I guess, in addition to the fact that we lived in, my grandfather was able to work, very hardworking man, couldn't read, but he was able to dig holes and sell coal to put us in the Beverly Hills of Jamaica, Iron Shore. But we still left. My mother still left and came to America for a better life, arriving in 1968, the year that good American people killed Martin Luther King. And we arrived in the place where all Jamaicans land, Flatbush, Brooklyn. But somehow, through houses burning down, insurance money, we were able to move to a comparable neighborhood in Long Island called the North Shore, where very wealthy white people live. But through that process, my mother, the terrorist she was, forced us to paint and me to play guitar. She was taking art lessons at the Art Students League in Manhattan. She was, aggressively becoming an impressionist painter. She forced my sister to take up the healthcare field, and she's now owns her own healthcare facility, nurse practitioner. But she also, terrorized her into playing piano and swimming. My mother was all about athletics, academics, and art. I was focused on becoming a soccer player, and like Pele, we worshipped Pele, and Reggie Jackson, who was a god for me. I played baseball and soccer, and I probably could have went pro if my father didn't screw that up. But I secretly worshipped boxing and boxers like Sugar Ray Leonard and Muhammad Ali. I worshipped them. I loved nobody more than these three people: Sugar Ray Leonard, Bob Marley, and Muhammad Ali. I wanted to be them. And then my mother found out about Maya Angelou, and that just became our beacon. Further back, my grandfather had worked in the Panama Canal from Jamaica, and he introduced my mom to the good life. I guess he bought her all this stuff, and all my aunts say that he, really spoiled her. And it translated to me, when I got my money, I started hanging out in LA and the Hamptons, all white parties, and just trying desperately to figure out how these wealthy people live. I was going to Tom Ford fashion shows. I was in every reefer cloud. And I was able to do this because I had friends who were working for Quincy Jones, running his record label as a CEO. This one guy, he went to Yale and Harvard. and Quincy Jones recruited him to be the CEO of his record label, Quest Records, back then, and that gave me an entree into the black celebrity world, and I was able to see a lot through them. And many people say that education is 80% exposure and 20% A, B, C's, and D's. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to expose black children that the same thing I was exposed to, a world that I would have never seen, to information early so that they can defend themselves. And the top of the technological food chain throughout the world, not just technology but anything, is in a term called a disruptive innovation, where people like my friend Mark, who went to both those schools, that's his mentality. And if it was not for him and them and my mother and everything that you've seen here, tried to paraphrase quickly, this book would never be. So that's where this comes from. That's the nexus of it, and I hope that's acceptable to you. My mom was nothing short of an academic terrorist, and I developed a strong hatred for her because of it. I didn't know why she wouldn't just leave me alone. In the summers, we were reading Hans Christian Andersen, and because she was an English teacher, she made me read all this English literature, and I didn't understand what they were talking about. Her and my sister would make fun of me because my sister was more academically inclined than I was, and as per her words, my sister was tougher than me. So my sister would have a good time making me look stupid reading when I just hated it because I thought she was trying to turn me gay or something, and I wanted to be tough with all the guys in the neighborhood. So I didn't want to be seen reading. But my mother would force me to do it. And then after a while, when she, after years of this, summers I can't go outside because I got to read English literature. I hated her. And I hated everything about reading. And then I discovered Alec Baldwin. Excuse me. Yeah, Alec Baldwin. No, not Alec Baldwin. James Baldwin. Jesus Christ, what a travesty. I discovered James Baldwin. I read all of his books because finally he was black and he was talking about things that I could understand. And I went through a real reading phase. I read everything about dogs because I wanted a dog. So I would literally read a book a day. I became a book nerd throughout all of me being the less smarter of the two siblings. I turned into a bona fide book nerd. And then fast forward when I went to college and I found out that black people invented jazz. I was like, what? I thought jazz was invented by Bing Crosby and all these corny teachers who made me play scales and just drilled me and almost made me cry. It was torture every Saturday. My mother would take me to these guitar lessons in these dimly lit rooms with these psychotic old men from the 50s who were jazz guitar teachers now, and they weren't really trying to teach me. But when I got to college and I found out that jazz people invented jazz music and the way jazz music was so articulate and black and dope, I was like, what? I refused to not be a great jazz guitarist. I went on a tear. I was studying engineering and I became obsessed with Miles Davis. Oh my God, when I found out he cursed out John F. Kennedy's wife over calling him, saying that your mama must be proud of you now, I was like, he's the man. Not to mention him being the only musician in the history of the last 200 years to invent 5 different genres of music. He's literally our Beethoven. Black people know nothing about him. I don't understand this. This incenses me. John Coltrane I was obsessed with. Max Roach. Wes Montgomery. I wanted to play just like Wes. I wanted to be the guitar player for Jay Leno's Tonight Show band with Branford Marsalis. He was my hero. I listened to everything he did in college, and I put down books for a while, and I just became obsessed with jazz music. I was the nerdy engineer, weirdo, with long dreads down to his shoulder, carrying engineering books in my knapsack and a jazz guitar Epiphone on my shoulder to class every day. And when there would be concerts, it'd be me and the jazz band, NU Jazz Band, and those black jazz professors at Northeastern. They took me under their wing like I was their son, and I just was obsessed with jazz music. That became the ethos of my upbringing. I read Malcolm X's autobiography. I read all kind of the black jazz professors at Northeastern, or not the professors, the black professors like Professor White, who told me about colorism and reaffirmed everything that my mother had been harping on me my whole life. They just they just set my mind on fire, and I was obsessed with anything that had to do with Pan-Africanism and African culture. Stokely Carmichael, the Black Panthers. My father had been ripping off at the mouth about the Black Panthers for as long as I could remember. He was always screaming at parties about, if you want to survive in America as a black man, you have to be super nigga. That was his battle cry. My mother would be like, shut up, but he wouldn't shut up, and I hated him for that too. And come to find out, he was right. Right, that's why I'm doing this video, trying to present myself as this super nigga, as he would put it. So Richard Wright, all these great authors really took a hold of me, and that's me. So even though you guys sometimes they think that I'm some uncultured black male gangster who needs to be put in jail, and how dare you come in here and write a book because it hasn't been reviewed on some. So my mother's level of academic terrorism was almost near abuse. She would keep me up late at night writing my sentences, and I could only watch TV shows about wildlife and Jacques Cousteau and National Geographic. She was in love with the Aztecs and would go on and on about them, and we would read books about the Aztecs and running water and their civilization. And then, 6th grade, she planned a trip for us to Paris on the Concorde, and we flew all over Europe and traveled all over the place, the Autobahn, and I took it as a chance to read comic books because I was sick of reading her literature. Some white racist cop tried to attack my father in the train station of London, so I attacked him and beat the hell out of him like a civil rights Black Panther, and my mother fell in love with me. She looked at me and smiled at me like the whole world was going to open up and just hug me, but my father, he did not like it. That's when our relationship ended. He felt I'd emasculated him. And plus, the other women in the community were gossiping about how we had money, and it caused a civil war where it was me and my mother against my father and my sister. Classic. To avoid this war, my father wanted to kill me. I ended up in the streets, but my father was threatening that he was going to kill me like Marvin Gaye's father had killed him. And so luckily I burnt our house down, and we got the insurance money from it. I burnt the house down, and I got Fs. I got a bunch of Fs, started failing because I was hanging out with some pretty bad kids. So my mother did the unthinkable and allowed my father to give me a really terrible beating, which he loved. And throughout all this, through the insurance money, we ended up in a neighborhood very close to Brookville and Manhasset, very wealthy people, so it took some of the sting off, and I, trying to get back in good graces, promised my mother that I was going to study engineering, which she held me to it. Started working at New York Tech so I could go there for free. But because I was around the wrong element, she said, nope, you're going away to Northeastern University. And luckily, Berklee School of Music was right around the corner, so I discovered everything that I hated my mother for. I started to want to play jazz music. I started hanging out in jazz clubs, and I got a job as a sales engineer when I graduated with Canon USA. I won trips to Monte Carlo, and I took my commissions and went to LA, Rodeo Drive, and the Hamptons. I went to all these parties, and I literally took it too far as a spy, trying to get close to these wealthy people to take what my mother had started and take it to the next level and really be successful myself. And to get into these places, I was off the meters with materialism, with polo and Purple Label suits. Before Jay-Z and Beyonce even knew what Purple Label was, I was wearing that, trying to sell myself to these wealthy racist whiteys in the Hamptons. And I drove a Range Rover that got me entrance into all the finest parties the Hamptons and LA could offer. All of this to basically learn their secrets as a spy. And that's what the book is about. The irony of it all is that I finally, after 35 years, discovered that my first job at Canon USA had given me this formula. But I was so insecure and not knowing who I was, so busy trying to distance myself from all the academics that my mother had tortured me with my whole life, I didn't realize that my first Jewish boss, Rich Tereskin at Canon USA, gave me this formula that I am now giving you today. So when I got into the corporate world, competing with white men who were making $200,000, $300,000 a year selling computer systems to Fortune 500 companies like CVS and Condé Nast and the Rockefeller Foundation, or closing that deal won me a trip to Monte Carlo. What other companies? Excuse me. Jesus Christ. Citicorp and I forgot. There's so many of them. The Montefiore Hospital. I closed a $20 million voice over IP deal. White men took that from me too. Financial tech firms in Wall Street. I closed them for large internet services, and I was the sales engineer and working in these jobs, selling high-tech equipment to the C-level suite, CEO, CFO, Chief Information Officer, Chief Technology Officer. Those were usually I was with the Chief Technology Officer. These sales managers would, I had to brush up on my reading again, because if you walked into a sales manager's office and you hadn't read one of these books, the meeting would be over. Less mine, the formula up there. But so these books became a second education for me, and I had to inhale all of them. And the influences of them are in the formula. Many people say that the formula is a cross between Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and How to Win Friends and Influence People. Those two books are allegedly the godfather of self-help business. Every business person that you see that's doing well in the corporate sector, excluding me, because I was black and I was ultimately, every time I would close a deal for more than $10 million, some white manager would take my deal and give it to some white boy. Unceremoniously, it just happened every time. I put 15 to 20 sales managers in positions of directorship with deals that I closed that they stole from me, running around the Hamptons and meeting people in the entertainment industry. But reading these books was how I was able to learn about sales and marketing, and they had such an influence on me that they ultimately led me to write the formula, to share everything that I'd learned at this level as a sales engineer. I was the nerdy engineer because I'd gone to Northeastern. These white companies, these companies like AT&T and Quest or Sprint, or my first job, Canon USA, selling computer systems. They would say, if you don't believe me, look, here's my nerdy sales engineer, Bintel Powell. Listen to him. He'll give you the bits and bytes of it. That was me. And now, when I'm in trying to sell a book to black people, they tell me that I wrote the book in jail, which is just delicious. But that's where I learned this, and you would have to read these books, and you would have to explain to your sales managers how you were going to use the theories in these books to make sure you made them lots of money. So these and other books are the ethos of my sales and professional upbringing, and the sales and marketing. I was able to use what I learned in these books to be my own publicist when I did my first freshman effort called Betrayed, and I was the publicist. I would call up and I would act as a publicist, give them a fake name, and I got myself on all those TV shows. It was me. The whole time it was me. So that is proof that if I can do marketing for myself and get myself all over the television writing press releases and press kits and selling myself as some mystery publicist named Michael Rickner, then I'm sure I can do this. I can do more than enough for the people that are going to be coming into your libraries and the children in your school to teach them the fundamentals of marketing. Plus, not only did I learn from these books, but I learned from my friends who are running their own marketing company under the umbrella of Quincy Jones. They were very successful. They did TV commercials, a lot of celebrities that you may know, Laz Alonso, Mekhi Phifer. A lot of these people worked selling advertising for them. And while during the day, I was hanging out selling engineering. Now, the mission of most libraries is the preservation of intellectual freedom, free information. And these are some of the value adds of the public library system. But disruptors, the very thing we're trying to teach your students to make, like Amazon, are threatening to destroy the entire infrastructure of libraries. More importantly, robotics and artificial intelligence is predicted in the next 15 years to be like a natural disaster or a tsunami in the black community. It's going to eliminate thousands of jobs. It's going to be like a hurricane hit the black community. and our children are not prepared for this. It's saying that the average earnings in the black community is going to go through to zero. It's going to eliminate that many jobs, and black men, I believe, are most at risk. So, black men are already being outpaced by black women. So our strategy, and most of the analysts and experts in the field of study say that the only way to save black men and the black community is to teach them how to invent new sources of revenue and income when robotics and artificial intelligence starts to eliminate jobs, to be able to reinvent value, to compete and to protect themselves, to arm themselves. Right now, black people don't have the weapons to fight back. We're outmanned. We're in a technological war, and we don't even know it, and we're not even prepared for it. And that's why mixing entrepreneurship with design engineering and teaching all of us to make it common knowledge what engineering and artificial intelligence is made of, so that we can defend ourselves against it, is the only way. It is the only way. I am the only publisher out there telling people emphatically what disruptors are, how to make them, and how to prepare yourself against them, because engineers are the ones that make disruptive innovations. This is what Northeastern failed to tell me. And this is why it is critically important, especially for the black and brown community, that they get this information. This is not me. This is just the reality of it. Do not get angry at the messenger. Now, quickly, if we're able to work with your library, these are some of the activities that we would the people who frequent your library through, and seminar with adults or children or both, teaching what disruptors are, how to make them, teaching what goes on at the C-suite, the people who design and engineer the company, the CFO, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Tech Officer, Chief Risk Officer, various sales strategies and unicorn business model design. We do TV commercials, and we do business plan writing. There's a whole host of other things, but those are some of the more prominent activities that we could do in a seminar capacity, and I'm sure the young and old would love it. Now, these are some of the soft skills your children and teenagers and adults would walk away with that would make your communities a better place. It would, give us the ability to work together more collectively for our greater financial good, less, violence in our communities, more empathy, more understanding. These are the skills that are not taught in the schools that translate to better outcomes in college and career, that the schools, quite frankly, sometimes are so hampered by legislation that they can't do even if they want to. The ultimate pressure is when parents demand that these skills and criteria be in the school curriculum. The superintendents then have to acquiesce because they'll be voted out of office. Right, and if the parents don't even know what these skills are and can't even request them, then the schools are in no hurry to do anything, and they don't care if all the kids go to jail. You think they care? We need leverage to force the schools to prepare our students for what's to come, because the schools won't do it. It's like they'll see a tidal wave coming right at us, and they'll just sit there and watch the tidal wave come and kill us. They would never say, let's get a boat and get ready to float out of here. They'll sit there and let themselves be murdered. They will not change. They're not going to change. You have to force them to. And any community that's preparing its children for what's about to come is doing it by force. Now, if this is engineering anywhere near what it merits the term engineering, engineers use, just like mechanics, they use tools, they use instruments. And in the spirit of building a money machine, here are some engineering tools and instruments consistent through all forms of engineering that I've invented so that you can make your very own money machine. And let's take a demonstration at how they work quickly. Now, here's a demonstration of just how the tool works, the logic statement works. The big secret is that the language of innovation and the thought process of innovation is in logic. And that's why these computer programming engineers are able to make these disruptors more rapidly than others. So this is just a demonstration of how this logic statement works. It's like a jingle that your students could basically sing and or just recite, and they'd be able to understand, as outlandish as this sounds, how any innovator came up with the ideas for their products. As you see, it has takes into consideration the thought process of the scientist and the engineer, and it is proprietary. It is something that I came up with after working in the industry and just seeing the different revisions. So this one is just basically doing demonstrations of how money was invented, because money is a product and it's bought or sold, it's a commodity, how a few different internet disruptors like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and MySpace. It shows the evolution over the history of the last 30 years of how social media platforms have been so disruptive and how they've turned their creators into billionaires and what value they offer society. And so your students can use this and do something very important as called reverse engineering the thought process of other great disruptors. And basically we're transcribing the thought process of disruptive innovation. Nobody has that. We're the only one that has anything like this. And again, this is proprietary. So all of your students would be able to just create disruptors, ideally, on demand. And this is a demonstration of how we use this model that I've invented. This is my tool. I created this. It's basically a spreadsheet or a mathematical cheat sheet for making a company. It employs something called modeling, which is mathematically or scientifically the basis of all disciplines. Models and risk go together, and there's a whole host of things. But basically, you can basically, like Lego blocks, put a company together and make a unicorn company. And none of the other companies or curriculum providers that I compete with, they may tell you that there's a such thing as a business model, but they don't have a universal tool for making one. In summary, Jamaican people traditionally have been known to be color struck on one end and affected by colorism, but warriors on the other end. It was a Jamaican man that instigated the Haitian rebellion to be the first colonized island to beat off their white oppressors and become free. Beat off the French, thank God. If we could just do that in Africa, every black person in the world would be rich. I heard something that says the French take $50 trillion out of Africa every year. 50 trillion. So our people stand to lose the most. Black people stand to lose and be devastated the worst by technology. The white publishers of these magazines that give libraries indications as to what they should buy are not going to support a black publisher that has content like this. Many of them are paying for their reviews. So what black author has ever been welcomed and enveloped by the white racist educational infrastructure? I don't know of any. We have to go through a grassroots movement. Excuse me, which I'm fine with. But basically I urge black reference managers to take a look at this, take a look at the audiobook, take a look into it. Don't just judge it on its face value that because it's a black person or a black company that it has no academic horsepower, because it absolutely is. I can say it's state of the art. I used at Northeastern, working in the labs for my co-ops, the schools like Harvard and MIT and Northeastern would do experiments in concert, and I would see this. So I know that Northeastern knew this. They just chose purposefully not to tell us. And the fact that I've been able to figure this out and disseminate it in a way that's simple for young and old, for black people, for all people, but primarily, specifically, my main interest is our people. We're due a leg up. They knew this and they refused to tell, and I think we should take advantage of it. I really do. I think our children black people invented math, and I don't want to go into a history lesson, but our children deserve to be able to defend themselves, and right now they cannot. And everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. We are technological sitting ducks right now. So my ask is that you would take a look at this with an open mind, because our people need it, and it, based on what I'm saying I can do and the amount of pain we can save the black community with this, I think it at the very least deserves you to look into it and seriously consider it. Thank you so much, and God bless you.